Now let me introduce you to a new function. It's a logical function introduced in Office 2019. And for those using Microsoft 365, you would be able to access this function. We are talking about the switch function here. And how do we use that? Well, this is pretty much the way how you can achieve the result with the help of if function as well. But the only thing is that in case of if, you need multiple layers of the if function. It helps you ease out on that part. Well then, isn't it the same as what the ifs function does? Well, at times you can use the switch function and the ifs function interchangeably, but the core purpose for both the functions are different, and there would be times when you may not be able to use both the functions for the same result. But for now, let me just show you something here. Now here we have a case of wherein one of the telephone executives had received a feedback from one of the customers, and she has been rated by D's. And now as per the norms of the company, she would be graded as either very poor, poor, average, good, or excellent. And how do we get that? Well, we can make use of the switch function here. Switch function. And what is the expression? 5, comma. Now, for this parameter, if the value is 1, then return the value as very poor. I would like to log the reference using the $sign, comma. And there is another one for 2, but I do not see that here. So I'll click here and use the up arrow key on the keyboard so that it can be highlighted. And log the reference, the row. And then again, same thing for the remark. I click aside and use the arrow keys to reach to the right cell. And again, log the row reference here. And then if it is 3, then show as the average. If it is 4, show as good. And if it is 5, show as excellent. So this is absolutely fine. And yes, it is 5. That's excellent. Let me copy and paste this formula down here. 3 denotes average. Yes. 4 is good. 3 is average. 6 is any. Wow. Now the customer, whoever would have rated this agent, she's so happy with the resolution that she gave 6. Now at times there would be certain forms where you may not get the option to select or a drop-down list to select from 1 to 5. Maybe it's a simple text box that you can just enter the number. Either intentionally or accidentally, the customer would have rated this agent as 6. So then, how do we get that? I do not like to see this error over here. It's a #any. This could have been fixed had this been number 6, let's say, of all the cells which have already been selected and referred in this function. This is one of those. If this was to be 6, this would be fixed, but then the number 5 become any because 5 is no longer defined now. So at times like this, I wouldn't want to see a #any error, but rather I would like to see something else. How about a question mark? Either I can put a question mark in double quotes, that's fine, and hit enter. So this becomes the default value. So notice the format of this function. Switch, first thing expression. I mean, where do you want to check? It's this cell, value 1. That means we say, what if this value is 1? Then return very poor. What if this value over here is 2? Then return poor. And if it is 3, then average, 4, then good, and so on. But then we have 6, and we did not define what if it is 6. So at such times, if we get a result, anything that is beyond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we would want to have a default value that's either as a question mark or maybe an NA. Now without a hashtag, this does not look like an error, but just a non-applicable. But rather I would put a question mark here and that gives a query. And this becomes a default value and hit enter and you get this. Take a look at this. If I were to change this to 6, we have this. What if this was -1? It's still an error over here. What if it was just 0? It's a #any error. Why? because we did not define the default value here, but here we did. Let me show you here. Here in this one we did. So if this becomes -1, it will remain question mark. So this function works good. Let me apply this to other cells. We did. And let's try this out. What if this is now -1? It's blank. What if it is a 0? So -1, 0, 6, none of them have been defined in this list. And hence you are getting a question mark, because the question mark is the default result that you will get if none of the other criteria match. And this is how the switch function works. Now moving on, let us try something more using the switch function. We'll try to execute something which we have already done with the help of the ifs function. Now here we'll try this out. Switch, I say switch 72.5. Okay, now this value less than 50, I log the reference, comma, it should be F grade. 72 less than 60, I give a E grade. And then 72 less than 70, I give the D grade. Then we have 72 less than 80, then we give a C grade. Further, 72 less than 90, we give a B grade. And then 72 less than 100, we give A grade. Now what if it is the same as 100? Well, I can define this as 72 equals 100, then return as A plus. And what if it does not meet any of the criteria? Maybe it could be an NA, so I'll just put NA in double quotes and hit enter. And here we have this. But let me just fix the reference here. It should be the D over here in this case. So that means there is something missing. So we did exactly the way how we had worked earlier, but this time it did not work. It is giving the default message of NA. That means although this is 72.5, it falls under less than 80, it should have returned C, but it's giving an error. What went wrong here? We tried a similar one over here and it perfectly worked, right? We selected this. You need to understand one thing while working with the switch function, that here in this case, okay, there is no comparison that's happening. It's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's same as it is. You do not have 5.5. What if this was 5.5? You see, it gives an error. So this is pretty straightforward and very much doable. Okay, but we need to compare these things, these scores. And so ideally, this one, we would have to make this as a true expression. So that means switch true and then start comparing C3 less than 50, then it has to be F and so on. And now I hit enter and see it's a C grade. I apply this formula down and perfect. Now it works fine. 49.5 is less than 50, hence it's F. 59.5 is less than 60, so it's E grade. So we do not have any A grades over here or A plus, but let's see if this were to be 100, what happens? Well, it's A plus. And what if this was 95? A grade. So this function works perfectly. This is the only change that we need to make. That's changing this to true. Now switch function generally takes or compares values as it is. That means there cannot be any kind of logical expressions over here like greater than, less than. That means you cannot make a comparison here. It's generally an exact match that it looks for, like what we noticed here. In order to fix this, or as a workaround, we try to force switch function to get into this mode of searching for this or comparing this value, because it does not matter whether this is 72.5 or not, but end of day there should be some relevant value. And if we put a true here as a workaround, switch function proceeds further and starts testing the case. And depending on the test result for each of these cases, accordingly, it returns the result. And that's it. Okay, what if this was 101? Well, it gives you an error, any message and not an error. And that's how it works.